Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Waterloo Council meeting on October 21st. We've been together a little bit today, and we've come and gone, and we're getting started again at 6:30. Council, I'll just ask again if there's a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Just me. So I need to declare on item 12B, Official Plan Amendment 51, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z 2402 for Leicester Sunview Developments Incorporated, and it's related to my place of employment. So I have this here for the clerks when they're available. Thank you. So we're starting off this evening with a delegation with the Region of Waterloo's Municipal Speed Camera Program. Welcome, Doug Spooner. Thank you for joining us to provide insight on this, this program. Thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor McCabe and Waterloo Council. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. My name is Doug Spooner, and I'm here with three distinct roles tonight. I'm the Acting Commissioner of Transportation for the Region of Waterloo. I'm a resident of the region and also the City of Waterloo, and maybe most importantly, I'm a father of school-aged children. And that's why we're here. As we work through tonight, I'd like you to keep two ideas with you that are quite different. The first is that we travel around our region, we should be safe. Our neighbors who walk, wheel, cycle, drive, take transit, or use a horse and buggy should be safe. And the next one is that those activities should also feel safe. Council, 72% of trips in our region are taken by car, but at the same time, between 30 to 40% of residents do not drive. So the following is how a municipal speed camera program can help us all be and feel safe. I'm going to walk you through why we should lower vehicle speeds, the current program overview, the expansion overview, an understanding of community safety zones, and how we plan to communicate this broadly, and obviously an opportunity for questions. Council, this is the most critical slide you'll see tonight, and what it tells you is pretty stark. A car traveling 40 kilometers an hour, by the time our eyes can talk to our brain, can talk to our feet, can apply the brake, takes 45 meters. The next is the rate at which a pedestrian can survive a collision of this type. This increases as you slow down. In fact, it goes from 15% at 50 kilometers an hour to 70% at 40 kilometers an hour. Slowing down has the potential to save lives. It's science, it's true, and it's an awful thing to know. Now, Council, your next question, is speeding a problem here? And I will point you to the top left red box. These are real incidents from our pilot program. 80 kilometers in a 30-kilometer zone at 7:51 in the morning, and you know what time school starts. Council, back to the previous slide, I can give you survivability statistics for 40, 50, 60 kilometers an hour. But at speeds on this slide, 80, 91, 94, 111, and 121 kilometers an hour, there is no statistic to share. Council, I, as I'm sure you do, receive lots of community feedback. Our residents are seeking tools to make our neighborhoods be and feel safer. And we're learning from around the world on this one too. Excessive speed is a factor in 1 in 4 fatal collisions globally. Speed cameras have been shown to reduce collisions by 50% and reduce serious and fatal injuries by 44%. It's a program that works, so let's talk about it locally. Currently on our roads, there are 16 camera locations with 4 active cameras. They rotate through those locations. And we have results. People driving the speed limit has increased by 63%. It's working. We've learned a lot. A local processing center will increase efficiency. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that on my next slide. The next is that the Provincial Offences Act court is at capacity with long wait times. And third is that all schools could benefit from a program like this. Council, we've been on a journey with Regional Council. We started in 2020 with a motion for a pilot program. Our first cameras were introduced in 2021, and up until Wednesday of this week, we'll be seeking final approvals to implement the program. And let's talk about where we go next. The overall plan is to grow by 36 cameras deployed across the region each year until 2028. Each year, I will return to Regional Council and report on the program, plans for expansion, and what our working group, which is comprised from staff from the region and each of our area municipal partners, have recommended as the locations for next year. In fact, this is happening right now with 2025 camera locations coming in by month's end. We currently have 2 cameras in the City of Waterloo, St. Nicholas Catholic School, and Keatsway, with plans next year to expand by up to 3. So part of the plan, as I previously mentioned, is a new local processing center and an administrative penalties program, and I'm going to walk you through the difference. So the first is the name. The name changes from a provincial offenses to court to an administrative penalties program. The administrative penalties program will be familiar to residents of the City of Waterloo because this is how we pay parking tickets today. The next is timing. Under the administrative penalties program, the entire process will take a fraction of the time. Next is about local. First, we will have regional staff doing the intake of individual tickets with the ability to cancel or vary tickets based on individual circumstance and financial hardship. And along with online and phone options, we can expand the number of in-person locations. And finally, the program is entirely scalable. Under the provincial offenses court, we were capped, and now with the administrative penalties program, we can grow, and we can also include other types of tickets. Okay, so moving from provincial offenses to administrative penalties is good. It's faster, we've got local control, and it's scalable. But the fines do increase. And they increase because we're changing programs, so they only change once. They don't stack if you have an administrative penalties program in a community safety zone or in a school zone. This becomes the new fine for all fines underneath this program. You'd be familiar with the fines on the right because those are the fines today in our existing community safety zones or also in construction zones. I will also note that the column in the middle has not changed in decades, so it may at some point, and that other municipalities such as Windsor have actually requested that these fines increase in a line. Okay, so the goal is road safety, and one of the outcomes is fine monies collected. So the real goal of this program is not to need community safety zones and not to need municipal speed cameras. Any monies collected that exceed operating costs will be put into a road safety reserve, a fund to fund safety projects such as the Township Traffic Calming Initiative, our roundabout pilot program, or roadway redesign, which again could result in the removal of that community safety zone and camera. So we do believe that tickets will increase in the short term and then reduce over time as we all slow down. This is another area where I will report back to Regional Council annually on the status of the reserve as well as projects that have been funded by it. I'm going to walk you quickly through community safety zones. And I'm going to use an example for you. If you think about a school zone is applied on the street with a main vehicular entrance, and it can be applied 150 meters beyond the boundary of that school. If that school has a back entrance or a side entrance that is used majority by pedestrians, we cannot add protections there. And so a community safety zone can be applied in areas where school zones don't apply. This assessment process is really important because the eligibility assessment in step 1 actually lets us consider other important community locations. We can look at schools, parks, community centers, hospitals, daycares, seniors' residence. We can look anywhere with a speed limit of less than 60 kilometers an hour to apply a community safety zone. The next is that we'll do a points-based risk factor assessment. We'll look at daily volumes of cars, trucks, and pedestrians. We'll look at traffic speeds, which, of no surprise to you, aren't always the posted speed. We'll look at collision history and a number of other variables that tell us that that is an area needing of additional protections. Again, I've mentioned why we would do this. Community safety zones fill a gap in the school zone to provide protection, but they also allow us to protect other important community spaces. Now, we need everybody to be aware of this program. It's about slowing down. Let's talk about how we do that. We've got 4 pillars. The first is on education of benefits of the program, much like tonight. The next is awareness about the cameras and their locations. The third is to inform people how they can pay or challenge a ticket. And the fourth is all of our partners in this program. I've mentioned a working group with our area municipal partners. We also work with school boards, student transportation, WRPS, community groups, anybody that wants to work with us and keep our roads safe. Next, we'll take a multi-pronged approach. We need to target the local areas. We will mail drop everybody within 1.5 kilometers of a camera location, but we also need to communicate broadly across the region. We must consider all needs. There are lots of languages spoken in our region. There are lots of ways that people gather information. We need to sustain that awareness. Council, we're going to publish the locations of each camera. They'll show up on your GPS. In fact, those that are out in market today already have. This program isn't intended to be punitive, hidden, or secretive. We simply want people to slow down and be aware of the community locations where we need more support, so our friends and neighbors can be safe and can feel safe. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm welcoming of any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Amazing 28 slides in under 10 minutes. Council, questions? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Chair, this is just a comment, but welcome to 30 kilometers per hour in Uptown Waterloo.
When this first rolled out, I will say that I was hoping all school zones would be included, so it's good to know that that's going to be the rollout. So I see Councillor Bodley and Councillor Bassick, and so we'll start with Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. If we implement community safety zones, I'm just trying to understand that process a little bit better. Is that something that's going to be initiated by staff at the local area municipality, and then the region will consider or contemplate whether or not a camera goes in there? Or is that something where the region is going to provide us with some sort of rubric by which a camera might go in? It's kind of a chicken and egg question, I guess. Which should we be thinking about first?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Very good question, thank you. So in this program, each of the partners maintains authority over their own roadways, so regional roads and local roads are managed. We do that working group work to do exactly that. So road safety professionals can often identify the areas of challenge. In fact, members of our community can do that too, and they tell us about it. And so we do that targeting of those hot spots. We'll have a number of cameras to roll out. We obviously have lots of partners in the region that are looking for them, so we'll simply prioritize those at a local level. They could come through this council for approval before coming to the region, and then we'll work as a working group to get those cameras placed. So yes, you maintain authority over the placement.
Okay, perfect. And just if I may, just a quick comment. I know very alarming, and thank you for highlighting that 80 in the 30 in front of St. Nicholas as the Ward 2 councillor there. Obviously, that's the flip side, the negative aspect of the story, and highlighting the necessity for why we need these things. But I will highlight that as the ward councillor there, and I've mentioned this at the Horseshoe here before, that was literally the worst street for complaints that I would receive in my first term of council. And since we put in the camera, the 85th percentile speed on Laurelwood Drive in front of St. Nicholas has dropped from 62 to 38. And residents in the area know when the camera is in and when it is not in. And so it just sort of speaks to the fact that people have altered their behavior even when the camera is not in place. And so I just wanted to share that story here, because I know that that's ultimately the goal of putting these things in, is not to ticket people, as you said. Although I think that the guy going 80 certainly deserves a ticket.
Councillor Bassick.
Through you, Chair Freeman, thanks so much for this presentation. Can you explain community safety zones? Do they extend beyond schools, or will they extend beyond school zones?
Yeah, through you, Chair, thank you for the question. So they can absolutely be applied along with a school zone. So if you think about that example, the roadway with the main vehicular entrance would be tagged as a school zone. You can apply a camera there, but you could choose the other roads and also apply a community safety zone and a camera on those if you liked. But again, the community safety zones can actually be applied in other parts of our community as well. So if you senior centers, community centers, other places where people gather and there's lots of movement. So it gives you the two options. You can overlay it on a school zone, but you can also use it in other areas. Thank you.
Councillor Roach.
Thank you for your presentation, Doug. I am the councillor in Ward 3, and school in Ward 3 is N.A. McEachran. I have lived in that area for over 50 years, and one of the streets that border on N.A. McEachran is a regional road, and I would say the average speed is at least 70 kilometers an hour that borders this school. As the acting transportation commissioner for Waterloo region, and Northfield being a regional road, what is the region's plan to slow down traffic on our regional road?
Yeah, through you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I did not review coming into tonight the McEachran School nor Northville Regional Road, so as an action coming out of today, I'm happy to do that. I would imagine that exists on our list today that have been provided by city staff, and that would be an area where in this program where we're working as partners, we'd be able to apply a zone and also a camera.
Thank you. I would say that Laurelwood Drive in front of St. Nicholas would be a little playground compared to the raceway on Northfield Drive and the N.A. McEachran School.
Thank you.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman, and thanks, Doug and team, for coming in. We've, as in my role as regional councillor, we've heard a fair bit as the timeline, as you showed in the timeline. Regional Council started this conversation in 2020, and hopefully we'll finish it on Wednesday night. But I appreciate you coming to all the area municipalities as well. So just a couple of technical things. Actually, before I say that, as I said at the region, one of the things why I'm very strongly in favor of this is the point that you made at the very start was that people need to feel safe as well as be safe. And for kids and, you know, people of any age, you want to have that confidence that you can send your child to school at the appropriate age and they can get there by themselves without having to dodge traffic like Councillor Roach was just describing and Councillor Bodley was just talking about. So, so that sense of safety and that confidence, I think, is really key to help people start to feel that they can maybe let their kids walk to school by themselves or cycle rather than having to be dropped off. So my technical question is, will the region be supplying speed cameras for community safety zones that the local municipality may want to establish in the future? So are you providing these? How does it work? If we say, here's the areas and the local roads that we agree to put these on, are you supplying all the materials and doing that work, or is it or is that with us as well? And it says if we opt to use, what happens if we opt to use different warrant criteria? Excuse me.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Great question. So the first about the speed cameras into community safety zones. So there was a decision taken at regional council that the region would take the lead on the procurement of cameras and the technical work to put them in place. I've described to you already the process for identifying those, which is done in partnership and very much by local staff. But yes, we have the capacity to support all of the area municipalities through this program as it grows. To your second question, the question about the warrant for community safety zone. So again, the warrant is effectively the justification for putting in a community safety zone. My team has done the work to develop the criteria for regional roads. You could adopt that immediately and say this is exactly right. There are some nuances and differences between regional roads and local roads, so that warrant could also be taken, adjusted a little bit to make sure that it fits local use and then used. But yeah, it's not, the warrant is done for regional roads. It could still be adapted for, yeah.
So that's good to know. And then just wondering about the name change to Municipal Speed Camera Program. As I recall at the region when you were asked this, it's legislative to call it Municipal Speed, excuse me, Municipal Speed Cameras. But could you just clarify that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So you will recall, having sat on regional council, this was the automated speed enforcement program for a long time, and it has become the municipal speed camera program. That's simply the word on the sign that the Highway Traffic Act tells us to use. And so it's just easier to align the program name with the name on the sign. It's a Highway Traffic Act sign, so.
Okay. Sorry, where was my question here? No, you know what, actually, Councillor Bassick and Councillor Bodley asked those questions, so I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate
Thank
again
you.
you coming in.
Is there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very kindly
you.
for your presentation. All right, Council, we're on to item 12A. This is an informal public meeting to consider item 12A, zoning bylaw amendment Z 2417, opulence homes 137 and 141 Woolwich Street. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands and anyone who signs the registry, and please note if there's more than one registry at the back, sign the one for the application you're interested in. Anyone who wants further notice of the application, including formal public meeting and passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate registry located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. As I said, if there's more than one registry, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one. The planner, Amino Bello, will now provide an overview of the application. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor McCabe, Chair Freeman, members of council, the public. My name is Aminu Bello. I'm a senior development planner with the city's planning section, and I'll be here to discuss the informal public meeting and provide an overview for zoning bylaw amendment application Z-24-17, submitted by Opulence Homes as the owners and represented by GSP Group. Here we have a location map of the subject lands. The lands measure approximately 0.19 hectares in size, has frontage on Exmoor Street as well as Woolwich Street. Currently, there's 2 single-attached dwellings on the subject lands. In terms of surrounding uses, single-attached dwellings are located to the north and to the east of the subject lands, and townhouse dwellings are located to the north and west of the subject lands. To note, the City of Kitchener municipal boundary is immediately south of the subject lands along Woolwich Street and thereafter. The next set of photos will take us through a photo tour of the subject lands and surrounding properties. The image on the right of our screen is Woolwich Street looking in the southwest direction. The subject lands are over to the right. We can see the shared use path as well as townhouse dwellings on the south side of Woolwich Street, which is in the City of Kitchener. The image on the right side is the subject property looking in a northwest direction from Woolwich Street. We can note here that there's 2 single-attached dwellings. The dwelling on the right of our screen is 137 Woolwich, and the house on the left is 141 Woolwich Street. Here are some additional photos looking from Exmoor Street. The image on the left is looking in the southeast direction. We can see the property frontage, and the image on the far right is also looking in the southwest direction. We can note single-attached dwellings located adjacent to the subject lands. Here's a concept plan of the proposed development. We can see here 2 townhouse blocks, with the block on the left having 5 dwelling units, and the block on the right having 6 dwelling units. The applicant has proposed a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units and 11 vehicle parking spaces within attached garages. Some additional material here for your visual. This is the elevation, the building elevations. This is a view looking directly from Exmoor Street. We can see a 3-story townhouse dwelling with a total of 11 units. And the image on the bottom right is a view looking directly from Woolwich Street, looking at the side of the facade. In terms of the current planning framework, the City of Waterloo official plan designates the property as low-density residential, which has a maximum building height of 10 meters, and a maximum density of 150 bedrooms per hectare. No official plan amendment is required to facilitate this proposed development. Moving on to the requested zoning bylaw amendment, the applicant has proposed or is being requested to rezone the subject lands from the residential 2 zone to the residential 8 zone with site-specific provisions to facilitate the proposed townhouse development. There are kind of 2 components to this site-specific amendments here. The first being the freehold towns. Modifications include a reduce to the minimum lot area to 165 meters square, a reduction to the side yard setback to 1.2 meters where 1.8 is required, and an increase to the maximum lot coverage of 57%, and normally the bylaw would require 40%. The applicant has proposed some interim provisions to facilitate townhouse block, which would require a setback of 7.5 as per the R8 zone, where they're proposing a minimum interior lot line setback of 1.67 and to exempt visitor parking. The interim provisions are intended to facilitate the townhouse block, where the future ultimate build-out would be freehold townhouses. But however, the applicant is intending to use a consent application in the future to first subdivide the lots into 2 blocks and then eventually create the 11 freehold lots. So the consent applications will be finalized once the building foundations are constructed and the lot lines between each unit can be determined at that future time. A number of reports and plans were submitted in support of the application, which are listed on our screen in front of us, include planning justification report, concept plan, etc. Staff are currently reviewing these materials to provide comments back to the applicant based on the concept plans and report materials. In terms of process and next steps, as I mentioned, staff are currently reviewing the technical studies, plans, and reports. Staff will then gather comments from the public, internal departments, stakeholders, etc. These comments will be provided to the applicant. If necessary, the applications will be refined, resubmissions and recirculations if necessary. And then at that point, once things are finalized, staff will advance a staff report recommendation to City Council for consideration. Again, we'll have a public notification for the actual public formal public meeting that will be held, and the council decision will be determined on this zoning amendment application. That concludes my overview of the subject application, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions, Council? Councillor Bassick.
Thanks, through Chair Freeman. I have 5 questions, so I can ask 3 and then pass it along, or I can.
Sorry to interrupt. Is it okay? I forgot to read
Oh, yeah.
the caution.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to ask if any councillor has a question. Please remember, this is an informal meeting and only questions of clarification may be asked. And council members should not express opinions at this point. Sorry.
It's okay. That was good. I have a lot of opinions about lots of things, so you never know. I wanted to draw attention to the trees as you're moving forward with your report and research. We've had 5 public comments come in. I've only been able to review 3. 2 came in later today. And a couple of them noted the trees, they're being mature trees, and in particular, there's interest in retaining the trees and the autumn blaze maples along Exmoor especially. And if that is not possible through the process, that at the worst to replace them at a 2-to-1 ratio. I just wanted to pass that along in public because that came from the public. And I was curious about density. So because the OP review is going to be likely promoting more density across the whole city, and the Lexington Residential District Implementation Plan was most recently reviewed in 2014, and that had a minimum target of 7,800, and our population estimates have grown in the region overall, so likely in that specific area as well. I'm wondering if the applicant contemplated, or if you, city staff, not just you, but city staff overall, suggested increased density on this site, and if that is part of the conversation, and if not, to help us understand maybe why or why not that is or isn't part of the conversation.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Vasic. So your first question regarding the trees is more of a comment? Yes. Okay, so that's noted. In terms of the density, the property is designated low density residential, and our colleagues at community planning are undertaking an OP review. Currently at the time, the low density residential designation is not contemplated for any density increases, so the 150 beds per hectare will continue to exist for lands designated that.
Super, that's very helpful, thank you. And then I have a question about the site plan and the freehold and the blocks. So if there's a plan to sever the block to create the 2 townhouse blocks, with each of these blocks containing less than 10 units, that means that each block would not require site plan control, because you don't need site plan control unless you have 10, more than 10. And so residential units. So if they were granted this request, I'm curious what oversight the city should or would have through what might have previously been the site plan process.
I'll just take us through the chair to Councillor Vazik. I'll just provide some context in terms of the Planning Act requirements. So under the Act, the site plan control is exempted for a parcel of land that contains 10 or less units. So technically, if the applicant does proceed with a future consent to divide the property into 2 separate blocks, they would be exempted from site plan control. What we can do as staff is, under the consent application, we could explore adding a condition to that consent to require site plan control as a condition, if that's the will of staff, and we can kind of vet that through this process as well.
Okay, so it sounds like that's something you're going to be talking more about and considering if that's necessary in this process, and if you do deem it to be necessary, then you would put that into the consent application?
Again, this is an informal public meeting, so I'm not providing a firm stance on what staff's opinion and what our next steps are, but that is a consideration that we can explore. And there's a lot of parameters under site plan that we could use to kind of tighten up certain elements, one being trees, other things being access, et cetera. So that can be considered.
Great, thanks for helping me understand that process. I have a question for the applicant, but I'm also noting that there are residents from the area in the neighborhood, and they may or may not delegate, I'm not sure. And so they have some concerns, as people do in neighborhoods where new developments are going up, and I think would like to be part of the process, but are maybe not necessarily, wouldn't typically have a say because they rent. I hope that's okay. I said that. I didn't know how to get around not saying that, sorry. And so I guess I'm just hopeful that city staff and the applicant will work with, of course, neighboring residents who own their properties, but also the people who live in on those lots right now. So the background for this thought for me is, at Margaret and Bridgeport, the city bought a couple of homes, and that will eventually become there'll be parkland, and there will be a playground there. And so one home has already been demolished. No one was living there, but there are people living and renting in the other home. And the city has worked really closely with them through the whole process, as I understand it. And so I'm kind of hopeful that a similar process would happen here. So I'm curious if that's possible, to what extent that would be possible, and what that might look like. So it's kind of on city staff, but it's also on the applicant. So I'll ask you this as well. I'd like if you could respond to that. Thanks, Aminu.
Through the Chair Threeman to Councillor Vazik, that's certainly something we can explore and will. It's in our interest to make sure that the application is meeting all interests, being the public and the applicant and city staff as well. Specific to trees, drainage, we did receive comments from members of the public, so we will take that back and provide our comments and take that into consideration.
That's super. That's all I have for you, Aminu. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have 2 questions. So one is specifically about what aspects of low-impact development are incorporated on a site like this, and how much control we have over that. The reason why I'm asking this question is because as we increase the amount of potential runoff at the property level, we obviously have to have a place for that to go. And very often in townhouse complex, and I was just at one over the weekend in Toronto, the downspouts, they're directed onto asphalt from time to time in some developments. And so my concern is that we have some method of, I guess, introducing that site level mitigation for rainfall. And the second question has to do with the coordination with the City of Kitchener in that respect, because we're right at the border, there's other developments. And again, I'm just going back to this accelerated hydrological cycle that we're in. and the impacts of extreme rainfall when we're rapidly intensifying in a particular zone, and we've got two cities maybe doing things in slightly different ways. So I just want to understand the coordination there a little bit.
Thank you for your question. Through the chair to the councillor, Councillor Wright. In terms of low impact development, also known as LID, this application is conceptual, but in the applicant's stormwater management report, they have indicated that infiltration galleries are proposed along the rear of the properties. So these are also known as soakaway pits. So essentially just it takes drainage from the rooftops, directs them through the downspouts and the leaders, and puts them into a pit to slowly trickle the stormwater into the system. So that is proposed at this time. Again, it is a zoning amendment application. Those details are normally sorted at the site plan stage, but that's the intent, what the applicant has shown to this time. Question number 2, regarding coordination with the City of Kitchener. Due to the proximity, this application was circulated to the City of Kitchener. In terms of details, in terms of coordination in that aspect, we can put a note to have those conversations and dialogues, but essentially that's my engineering colleagues, so I'll just put a note to myself to keep that in mind.
Other questions, council? I had a couple of questions. So can you just advise whether or not the region of Waterloo requested a traffic study to be completed for this property?
The regional staff have not requested a traffic impact study for this application, nor one was submitted.
Okay, like, I obviously didn't see that it's supporting documentation, but I wanted to make sure, because it wouldn't be deemed a complete application if it was required, so I understand that. One of the things I wondered about, though, was at what point do we do traffic counts to determine if changes to that intersection need to be done? Like warrants, like who's checking the warrants?
Through the chair to the chair, Councillor Freeman. I will defer to transportation to provide some context on that item.
Through you, Chair Freeman. Traffic counts would be undertaken as part of a normal traffic impact study, but in this case, a traffic impact study may not be required. We could undertake studies ourselves as city staff to understand that aspect a little better, and that's something that we could certainly do.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question because there is a lot of increased land development happening in that community, and we have a series of roundabouts along Woolwich Street in and around there. And so while I appreciate that 11 units might not tip the balance, there's still changing traffic patterns in that community, and so it just makes me wonder whether or not we should be double checking that, even if it's a scope TIS. That's just I'm just wondering about that because it can be a very busy road there. That was the one question. The other question that I had was, with regard to site plan. So you mentioned, sorry, I was trying to remember everybody else's questions at the same time. Can you confirm that at the formal public meeting, if council wanted to, they could provide direction with regard to site plan?
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman. In terms of site plan control, it's normally not in the purview of a zoning bylaw amendment application, but certainly we can explore like what we want as a city and as staff as what's important. There is, as I mentioned, other mechanisms we can explore through the consent application, through conditions, but again, those are not council related items, they're more related to committee of adjustment.
Yeah, I appreciate that council has delegated authority where site plan's controlled, or site plan control is related, but in the past, we have given direction on how we would like site plan to give consideration, so I just want to keep that in everyone's mind's eye, that when it comes back at the formal public meeting, it may be that council chooses to provide some direction, even though staff and through the consent process can choose to accept or not accept council's recommendations, suggestions in that matter. I just want to put it out there that I believe it exists as an option for council. Joel is nodding. I trust that I hope that you're okay with that too, that it could come down the road.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. I think those were my questions and comments on this. At this time, I'm going to ask registered delegations to come forward. Thank you again for your presentation and overview. I particularly appreciated the photo context that you provided. The the registered delegation we have is Michael Whitmer, who's a senior planner with the GSP Group. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of council. I'm not sure what happened to the font on sending through the presentation, but I can assure you that's not our boilerplate font that we use in these types of presentations.
Brings me back to my, dot printer days.
Okay, so I'm Michael Whitmer. I'm a senior planner with GSP Group, and I'm here tonight with our clients, Opulence Homes, Sunny and Harmon Lubana, who are able to speak after my delegation if you so have any specific questions to the property. But I'm here tonight to delegate at the informal public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment Z-24-17 for 137 to 141 Woolwich Street. So I won't go over too much of what my colleague Aminu did. He did a great presentation on the site background and context. So to save some time, I'll move through this fairly quickly. But the site is located in the southeast ward of the city, Ward 5, along the municipal boundary with the city of Kitchener, which runs along Woolwich Street. The site is directly at the corner of Woolwich Street and Exmoor Street and is within the Lexington district. The site is within the built boundary of the city where intensification is encouraged. Woolwich Street is identified in the official plan as a minor collector road, and there's been recent active transportation improvements along Woolwich Street, including a multi-use path that provides access to many nearby park and shopping amenities. The site, in terms of land use, is surrounded by single detached dwellings on almost all sides, with the exception of on-street townhouses on the south side of Exmoor Street, as well as recent developments on the south side of Woolwich Street in the city of Kitchener for clustered townhouse developments. There's also an active development application a little further south on Woolwich Street in the city of Kitchener for additional townhouses. The proposed development, the rezoning, is looking to rezone the site to get entitlements to permit 11 freehold on-street townhouses that will all face onto Exmoor Street. There will be 2 townhouse blocks, and the buildings are 3 stories each. The building will have up to 29 bedrooms, either 2 or 3 bedrooms per unit, which will result in a maximum density of this development being 149.5 bedrooms per hectare. Each townhouse unit will come with an attached garage as well as a private driveway, which will meet the minimum parking requirements for on-street townhouses. The grading of the front of the lots will be brought up to match the existing grade of Exmoor Street and gradually slope down to the rear yard. And we intend to submit consent applications in the future should the zoning bylaw amendment be approved to create the lots and blocks to permit the townhouses. We intend for each lot frontage for the individual units to be 5.5 meters. And this is the concept plan that Aminu went through quite well, so I'm happy to come back to this slide to focus on details if there is any questions. I will now walk through the proposed zoning bylaw amendment in more detail. The application we have submitted to the city is looking to rezone the site from the current residential 2 zone to the residential 8 zone in bylaw 2018-050 with some site-specific exceptions. And Aminu went through some of our exceptions that we're requesting are being done on an interim period at the request of city staff, and I've highlighted those tonight on the presentation in orange. These site-specific exemptions will only apply for an interim period, which will allow for the detailed design and development of the 2 townhouse blocks prior to final severances being submitted to create the lots. So the site-specific exemptions that we have submitted in our application include reducing the minimum lot area to 146 square meters, whereas 165 square meters is required, reducing the minimum interior lot line setback to 167 square meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required, reducing the minimum side yard setback to 1.2 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is required, increasing the minimum lot coverage to 57%, whereas 40% is required, and permitting 0 visitor parking spaces per unit, whereas 0.33 or a third visitor spaces are required. If, when we go to submit the severances and they are approved, the 2 interim zoning exceptions will essentially fall off and no longer be applicable or necessary to facilitate the development. So far, since submitting our applications, we've heard some feedback both from the community and staff. And what we've heard so far comes down to 4 main issues, and we're happy to continue listening at this point to intake more input before a decision is made. The first issue that we have heard about is tree preservation on the site, given that the site has 13 surveyed trees. Several of them are mature. 5 of these trees, all on the site, are identified with the current proposal for removal. And any tree removals that are associated with the development will be done with the city's tree bylaw requirements. There are 2 trees in particular along Exmoor, or there are 3 trees in a row along Exmoor Street. 2 of those are at this point proposed to be removed. The tree directly at the corner of Exmoor Street and Woolwich Street is proposed to be retained. And we have also submitted a preliminary landscape plan with our application, which is proposing at this point to plant 4 new trees on the site. The next concern we've heard about is traffic impacts. And I come back to my previous comment that Woolwich Street is a collector road. A transportation impact study was not identified by the region or the city as a requirement in pre-consultation discussions. We are aware of concerns with relation to on-street parking impacts, especially during construction with development, and we are willing to work with the city and residents on those concerns to manage them accordingly. The next concern we've heard about is grading and drainage, and particularly site servicing. I can say with the functional servicing report and accompanying civil drawings that we submitted with our application, that a new storm sewer for the proposed development is proposed to be installed at the rear of the site. And as mentioned previously through questions, there also will be infiltration galleries for each of the units that the downspouts will be directly connected to. And finally, another comment that we've heard about is affordable housing. In the region's new policy for 30% target for all new housing created annually to be affordable to low and moderate income households. So we acknowledge this policy and will be responding to the region's request to specifically address this. So that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, council. Questions? Councillor Vasek.
Thanks through you, Chair Freeman. Thanks so much for this. Just to your last point about the affordable housing, when you said you're planning to respond to that, what does that mean, respond? Just like send an email back with your thoughts that say no? Or like are you hoping to engage in a conversation that's like of interest to provide affordable housing? Just trying to gauge that.
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, we definitely intend to engage in a discussion on affordable housing. That comment was predominantly received by the region to respond to their policy and their regional official plan, whether we will or we won't be providing the affordable housing. So that's something that we'll be taking back and discussing with our clients. And before a decision is made, we'll respond on how that will be implemented in the development.
Okay, thanks. And to the trees, you heard my comments, so I don't need to restate them. But in your slide, it said there's 5 trees identified for removal, and you're planning to plant 4 more, which would mean that you're not even replacing what's there. And one of the suggestions from the person who emailed or messaged about this sent in comments officially, knows stuff about trees and knows about city and regional policies. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the 2-to-1 ratio that they had suggested.
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, and thanks for that question. And I'm aware in a lot of municipalities that is a fairly standard ratio for compensation. We will take that back to our landscape architect who's on the team to discuss if there can be any more trees so we can perhaps double what we're looking to provide. What we provided so far is just a preliminary landscape plan. And further to that, I appreciate there was discussion before on if we were to go ahead and submit a site plan, what would be included in that site plan submission. And a typical component of that would be a more detailed landscaping plan. So we'll be continuing to work on that. And as the site continues to evolve in terms of grading and drainage and everything else, we'll see if we can accommodate more.
Okay, thanks so much for that. I was also curious if you're considering any accessible units.
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, through the details that I have so far, not what I'm aware of, anything above and beyond what the building code would require, but that's something we can take back to our designer's orchard.
Thanks so much. And hoping you can also comment on sort of relationship building with people who are living in the homes there right now.
Through the chair, and thanks for that question, Councillor Vasek. So we had a bit of a discussion just before the meeting began with some of the residents who are here tonight, understanding some of them are in fact tenants of our client Opulence Homes. There is open dialogue and through the tenants and our clients as well as the community, and that is something that we're prepared to continue as the application is reviewed. They have our contact information as well as our clients' contact information, and we're dedicated to continue discussing this with them and giving as much notice as possible.
So are you implying that they should message you, or will you message them? I'm just curious who's going to get the ball rolling, or and what that will look like.
Through the chair, that's something we're willing to work with. However, maybe with city staff, would their preference in facilitating these types of discussions typically work? Maybe if they start with city staff and then it comes down to us, or if we want to take and have a side conversation, we're happy to go either way and whatever works best for the community.
Okay, super. Thanks so much.
Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Vasek asked my question, but I think I just want to build on it a little bit more about the communication with the current residents. And I don't know, I haven't spoken to them, I don't know what their plans are, what their desires are, but if there is a desire to return, if there is, those conversations are open as well, if they wish to move back into this unit so they can stay in their neighborhood.
Through the chair, that's a great question, and we're definitely committed to continue to explore that if that is a possibility, and we'll have that conversation.
Other questions, Council? I had a question. You mentioned transportation, and so you said it wasn't part of the application. I understand that, but it seems as though it was kind of on your radar. Is that fair to say?
To you, Chair, it definitely is on our radar, especially in terms of the on-street parking comments that we got. We did look to the recent improvements in the study that was done for Woolwich Street in the last few years, but we're prepared to have that discussion if the city so gives that direction.
Can I trouble you to go back to your slide where you spoke about the changes that you wanted, this slide? So, while council might be familiar with planning applications and such, maybe others aren't. Can you unpack why the reduced minimum interior lot line setback variance and the permit for 0 parking spaces will, quote, go away once you go through your severance application or your consent application?
Certainly, and to you, Chair, these two interim exceptions that we've requested will go away because if we create the blocks to begin with and go to obtain building permits to build the perimeter and the foundation of the house, they will, for that interim time, be considered cluster townhouses or a townhouse complex, where the rear yards would be interpreted in a much different way than on-street towns. But once the individual lots are created to do conventional on-street townhouses that would face onto Exmoor and not be associated with a condominium complex, for example, the lot configurations will change. In this case, the 7.5 meter interior lot line setback won't need to be as great as 7.5 meters. And to visitor parking on street townhouses, it's fairly typical for them to not require any visitor parking.
Okay, thank you. Is there other Mayor McCabe?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for coming in. Just wondered about the energy strategy that your clients are thinking about for this property, like, have they considered green development standards at all, like, like heat pumps or more sustainable building for a building like this?
Through you, Chair, to Mayor McCabe, we haven't got to that detail of design at this point yet, and our clients haven't indicated that's something that they're looking to include at this point, but that's something we can certainly take back and look and work with our designers on and speak with our clients further of which aspects they're looking to include.
Okay, are you aware of the city has an energy, forgive me, I forget the name of it, as part of some of the studies and the work that planning developments come in with, we have recommendations around energy use, and I apologize, I forget what it's called. Someone help me out. Joel, what's the, or Aminu, sorry.
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, energy study.
Yeah, the
Typically,
energy study. Yeah, the energy study. So you're familiar with the city's requirement for an energy study, but you haven't contemplated that, and I know we're at the informal stage, but have you contemplated that as part of the work that you're doing?
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, that hasn't been something we've contemplated yet, but we are aware of that study, and it's something that's been asked of us, of our firm, on other applications as for a complete application, but that was not indicated as a requirement for this application.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions, council? Seeing none, thank you very kindly for your delegation. Is there anyone else present tonight who would like to speak to this application? If you would, please raise your hand and provide your name and municipality of residence for the record. So is there any questions from, yes,
Yeah, there's
okay.
someone here.
So just, if you can just come up one at a time, those that have raised their hands. And so again, if you could just provide your name and municipality, so it can be Kitchener, Waterloo, just, you don't need to give your address or any personal information.
I'm from 137 Woolwich Street, Waterloo.
Okay, thank you.
I have here a petition signed by neighbors. We have 86 signatures in 3 days, all against this zoning change. We have lots of wildlife, we have traffic flow, we have old trees. The one tree's over 100 years old, easy, and that's one of the ones to be torn down. We have raccoon family, skunk family, possums, we have butterflies, hummingbirds, and the community. We have neighbors that love us already. We've only been there since June. The traffic flow already from the apartment building across the street from us, when that starts getting people in it, there's going to be so much traffic, we're not going to be able to know what to do with it. And their luxury apartments are going for $1,800 to $2,100 for a one bedroom. And that's not affordable. People can't afford that. 1 bedrooms? We need to think more about the community and the environment and our wildlife, our streets. It's just too much.
Thank you. Was there, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Sorry, Kerry Church.
Karen?
Kerry, Kerry, Church, like the building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry, just wanted to see if council.
Sorry, I'm anxious.
See if council had any questions for you, that's all. Yeah, Councillor Bassick.
I don't have a question, but thank you for delegating, and it is nerve-wracking to be up there, and I don't know if that's your
I
first
just also
time.
found out I was diabetic, so I'm kind of like.
Oh, sorry. So especially hard day, sorry. But thank you for coming, and it's hard to be up there no matter what, and then it's especially hard to be up there if you've had personal things going on. So thank you for taking the time.
I appreciate it.
And if you wanted to leave your petition with the clerks, you're welcome to do that. Okay, and you can forward additional signatures to the clerk's office. Yeah, thank you. So there was definitely other hands that I saw, so please, again, just state your name for the record and municipality of residence.
Hello, my name is Saba. I'm in the municipality of Waterloo. I'm a neighbor of the residence that's happening. I own my property. I just wanted to share some concerns. Sorry, there wasn't actually a lot of time I had to prepare something like this. I didn't think I would. But just quickly to mention, I work with a lot of developers and construction companies in my line of work. When I think of new developments in the city in general, I think generally it's a pretty good idea. In my mind, that's how it used to play out. After learning about the industry and working where I work right now for a while, I'm not entirely sure how these decisions are being made or who is being put into consideration for these decisions, whether it's, and honestly, it feels to me that the developers end up building something, they rent it out to people, they're completely disconnected from the neighborhood community, they have no understanding of what's going on there, and it's for their financial gain. And that's fair, we do live in a free market, but at the same time, I feel like there should be consideration given to the neighborhood and community. We talk a lot about affordability and housing crisis. I'm sure all of you have heard about that on the news. I don't think properties like the one that have, for example, just gone up across the street are solving any of those problems. It's owned by the corporation. 1 in 5 homes, according to CBC article, is owned by a corporation. How is that solving the problem necessarily of creating affordable housing or creating an entrance for people trying to buy a home in this neighborhood or anywhere in Kitchener-Waterloo? From my experience when we learned about this, I was walking by our neighbor's house, and from my understanding, they didn't even know about this. They didn't talk to their landlord, didn't reach out to let them know this was happening. I didn't know the properties were bought. I knew the old owner, and they had informed me that somebody new had bought the properties just 6 months ago, and now this is happening to a family that has 6, 7 children in one home, and there's children in another home. It's crazy for me to think that we would just allow this to happen without thinking about the impacts on the people living in those homes. We've, I've met my more immediate neighbors. I've had more conversations with them, but at the same time, I'm very happy with my neighbors right now. They're amazing people. The kids are amazing. Yeah, and just one more thing. I was given the notice. I got a letter in the mail on October 7th telling me that I had until October 9th to write a written response, which is why I assumed that I wouldn't be able to speak today, and I didn't have something that prepared. But yeah, I feel like there should be a bit more time. I'm glad you had mentioned that no decisions will be made today, and we'll have a better opportunity to kind of talk about this, have a proper discourse on what the impacts on the community will be, which I have not heard of. Nobody's contacted me, or I don't believe, based on my conversations, that anybody's contacted the neighbors or anybody to let them know. So I'm not entirely sure what the other gentleman was talking about when he said he had conversations, or there were, interests or whatever that the public gave them. I don't know what public. Definitely not the immediately impacted people. But yeah. That's it for now. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for letting me speak today.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to see if council might have a question for you. Mayor McCabe? Sorry.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Just thank you for delegating. And just a comment more than a question.
Sure.
There's a website, kind of for everyone to know, there's a website called Engage WR.
Okay.
Where projects it's regional municipality, but it's all the municipalities in our region. You can go there and you can click on the Waterloo part, and there's projects and planning developments and that are posted there. I don't know if this one is posted. This one is posted there. So you can go there at any time to find out more information. And also it's updated when there's any changes and things like that. So that's for planning and developments that are coming through that, but it's for a wide range of other projects and initiatives that the city is working on as well from across our department. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that as well, because that's a key tool that we use for providing information to residents about things like this development, but then also a variety of other projects and programs that the city is doing. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Thank you so much for letting me know that resource exists. At the same time, we actually look at that a lot at work to understand what developments are going around. But when something's being done immediately next to you and a letter gets sent 2 days prior, I don't make it and I don't think anybody does. Like, we all have jobs, we all have to come home, tend to our homes, clean, cook, do these things. It's not my usual routine to go there every day to understand what projects are coming up. I think it makes more sense for it to be the responsible of that corporation that's building this multi-unit, or I don't know exactly what it is, sorry, townhomes or whatever it is, next to us. But thank you, and I will look into that resource as well.
Yeah, and fair point with respect to, the onus really isn't on residents. I mean, but although if you want to check that, and you can sign up on our website for a variety of notifications so that people are aware of what's happening again across the corporation.
Yeah.
Waterloo.ca, and
Thank
you
you
can
so
search
much.
through there. And yeah, so I just want to again make sure that you're aware of those type of resources where we do publicize a variety of information. But thank you again for your time today.
No problem, thank you too.
Thank you. Councillor Vasek just had one comment for you as
Yeah,
well.
thanks through you, Chair Freeman. I'd just like to thank you for delegating. You seem like maybe you've done this before, but
Never.
Never. Oh wow. Sorry, that was. Anyways, you seemed calm as a cucumber. But I do appreciate the comments as well that you share, and certainly food for thought about how we can improve our processes to get stuff out sooner. Sometimes it's external, like the mail just didn't get to you in time. But if there's anything we can do to improve our processes, it's certainly worth looking into and considering comments like, really thinking about the neighborhood and other things you've said here, like how you're maybe uncertain about the decision-making process as well, which is also important for us as councillors to hear and for staff to hear as well, because we're always wanting to improve those things. So that, among a number of things that you've both said, are really important for us to take back, and looking forward to getting to know you a bit more over the process.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, thank you. It's fair that communications around applications such as this is something that is a work in progress, and we continue to try to do better all the time. So
Of course.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and so you can have a seat. Please welcome.
Thank you, Jalud from Waterloo. Thank you,
I'm
Chair.
just going to have to ask you to speak directly into the microphone, please. It's very hard to hear. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Jalud from Waterloo. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I didn't think that I would get to speak today because the letter said that by 10 a.m. we had to register. And I found out late in the afternoon that I didn't know that I could speak. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My property is actually the one on Exmoor, right behind the development. So when we purchased this property, we looked at the zoning, and one of the reason we were willing to pay a little more extra than what we did was because the whole block on Exmoor and Woolwich was zoned for R2. And then this significantly changes, at least, I don't know, like the way we did, someone else also in the future when they buy the property. So that had an impact on us. Again, because we were thinking that we'll be leaving behind one unit dwelling, so we didn't think that there will be a big development right behind us. And our lot is not big, so therefore, this townhouse will be right very close to us. That will be the one we see. We have a very small backyard. So this will be right next to us. Our neighbor will be significantly impacted. We'll have no view except the townhouse. That's one of the concerns we have. The other one is drainage. Again, our house slopes down, and now they're going to build a retaining wall, and then the slope is going to be toward our yard, our backyard. So far, because of the lower land, the way this lot is currently, so it always flowed away from us, the water. So now we don't know what's going to happen when the water flows backward toward us, and we have this gully in between. The other part I think the councillors and the mayor also have addressed is the issue of traffic. I am a father of an 8-year-old, and I worry all the time. when he crosses over to the park at in Exmoor. That's one of the things we worry about. So now with increased traffic, with no visitor parking, we worry that if this development currently ends up being 11 townhouses, but it could be also condos once the zoning has changed, where are those cars going to be parked? We worry about all of those, where suddenly you have cars parked on the street and the kids will be darting between cars, and it will be very little time for anyone to react. And then actually, one of the things I was very happy today was attending this meeting was the first presentation that was given about the speed and the kids, that really was moved. And I was really happy actually to attend. I didn't think this would be a good meeting, except that one saved us. So I was very happy to attend. So it makes a huge difference, because that's one of the things we have is same thing. We have cars going very fast on Exmoor. They turn off Woolwich, they go fast. And again, increasing the number of cars in those areas, it's one of the things I'm really worried about. Also, when it comes for winter, like the snow clearance and everything, if the park cars are parked, they will make it very difficult, because currently, with what's proposed, anyone who wants to park will be parking on my neighbor's property and our property. Because that's the one that when they curve, that's the only one available. So it will be my neighbor's property, and then the one right curved will be ours and the park. So that will be where visitors will be parking. And we will be affected both in terms of the safety I mentioned, and also when the snow is being cleared. If the cars are there, the snow doesn't get cleared, and we are stuck, and we have to shovel ourselves on the public street. These are my points, so thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly for coming this evening and for your willingness to share your thoughts with all of us. I'll just see if there's any questions. I just see a question for staff, but thank you for your, I'm sorry, Councillor Vasek.
Through you, Chair Freeman, I've talked to everyone now, so I would like to talk to you, but I also feel like I have to. But it's I do appreciate you coming in very much, and I saw Aminu taking notes, and so he'll take those back. And also what I'm hearing you say is that you're finding council meetings riveting, and so we will see you back in the gallery in future, I'm
Maybe,
sure.
I'm not kidding. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just, Councillor Rowe just had a question. I see your hand, and Councillor Rowe just had a question of staff based on the delegate.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, I'm wondering if I can speak to staff and just to address the concerns about parking and about snow clearing, et cetera, and how that can be looked at down the line, like after, say there is a development, what mitigation measures can be looked at to address those concerns?
Councillor Rowe, I think it's best to address your question to the planner.
Yes, sorry,
on the
Amy, I
application.
apologize. Yeah, I was thinking traffic, so I automatically went over to Bob. I apologize.
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe. So that stresses the importance of site plan control. So that's an important item to look at those nitty-gritty details in terms of parking, snow clearing, if there's enough space between driveways for those kind of details, and that's what the process is intended for. So that's when we would explore those impacts as well. But it is important for us to consider that now, because we are considering what's appropriate for these lands, so we'll take that back.
Thank you, and I apologize again.
No problem. So I saw another hand here, so please approach the microphone, and if you could please state your name and your municipality of residence. I'm glad that you know how to use that, because that's fantastic, because it helps me if you speak directly into the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I'm very small. My name is Naz Rahimi, and I'm with the municipality of Waterloo. So I just wanted to mention a few concepts that I think we should keep in mind when thinking about all these things. When I was younger, I studied law, and I remember when I was studying it, it was like, the easy way to look at it was like a bunch of people who maybe made mistakes. They wrote down some rules, and then everyone kind of went by those rules. And then things changed, and then someone else made mistakes, and then we used them as examples and said, well, you know, when these guys messed up, this is the decision that person made, and we call it case law. And then we write it down, and we call it statutory law. And then we have conversations, and we call it policy. And the struggle I have with that is that everything that was in these presentations was purely policy-based. It was, here's what we're required, we're telling you what we're required, you should allow it to happen. And this is where I think if we do function in purely these principles, then unfortunately we become no more than sophisticated animals because we forget that we are human beings. And I think a lot of the principles that everyone who is against any of these ideas is speaking to a fact that we want to have a neighborhood that builds contributing members of society. And when you have a crammed environment where, we figure out where the dump goes and where the water goes and stuff like that, yeah, it makes sense as a financial benefit to the members of the team that are sitting behind me who are planning this. But it doesn't benefit the community. And it doesn't benefit creating members of contributing members of society. I don't see in those plans any places for children to run. I don't see places where people can grow any homegrown food. I know for us, we grow pumpkins in our garden. We have amazing wildlife that come and go that keep eating them, but we're going to learn how to manage that. The point is that we've built a community and we've built a home and we want to raise children in that home. And we can't see that happening in an environment where there are many, many people crammed in and right next to us because we are very close. And everything I've heard about this plan doesn't include any kind of integration, any kind of awareness of the people there. This is the first time we've seen them. We've been there for a number of years. So I think I just want to basically demonstrate the fact that architecture is supposed to be where bringing people together and creating structures where people can thrive and grow and develop. I don't see that in these plans. And I don't see any plan for that to be developed. I hear that we're having a conversation, but really the principles that I am hearing more than anything is just that they want to keep within the rules to get things done. And that's not the principle of development of humanity.
Thank you. Councillor Basak.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. Certainly different thoughts than we hear often at a delegation, and so it was really quite beautiful. I was meeting with Joel Cotter, who is the Director of Planning, on another thing. And you were talking about the importance of what we do is we build community, right? You have to have homes in a community. Maybe you don't have to, but you have homes in a community and you want to, but we're in the business of building community. And so I'm really glad that you highlighted that. Also, I saw Aminu taking notes. And so how do we think about how do we build community for everyone who lives there, the people who are there now, the people who will come after, the children who are there now, and who maybe will come soon, hopefully for you. And so thank you for just highlighting that in such a beautiful way.
Any other comments for the delegate? Mayor McCabe?
Just briefly to say thank you for coming in, and I echo Councillor Vasak's comments. And just know, I hope that the proponents of the development are here tonight and listening to the comments that you and your other delegates have said, and hopefully this is an opportunity to have some of those dialogues.
Thank you. So I saw another hand. Please come to speak.
Sorry, if I can raise it. Sorry about that. Good evening, Chair.
If you could just raise it a little bit more so that you're directly into the microphone, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Council. My name is Sunny Lubana, and I am one of the owners of 137 Woolwich and 141 Woolwich Street. Just to give you a little background, I've stayed in Waterloo for almost 3 years. So Waterloo has been always near and dear to me, like both personally and professionally as well. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the comments. Through the chair, I would like to respond to regarding the Councillor Vasek. So regarding the tree plantation, definitely would like to preserve as much tree as we can. And if the trees, more than 2 trees are, like 1:2 trees are required, we can definitely have that conversation with our landscape architect. And if there is a space, we are more than willing to actually adapt it in our plans. Also, we would like to, like regarding the communications, we are more than open. Michael is here from the planning, but if like any of you guys actually need to have an access, we will be more than willing to actually hear your comments, hear your concerns. I can share my phone number, my cell phone number, or email, whatever way we can do something to make this this place much better. I know, being a tenant and staying in the community, it's a little bit, it's harder because after maybe 2 years or some time, they might have to move. But they have been a great tenant. We love to have them back. If there is a way we can accommodate them and any way we can help them, we would definitely love to have them back. No worries about that. One more thing, I think across the street, there is a cluster house development. We are proposing a freehold townhomes. We are proposing attached garage with a parking pad, the garage in the front. So definitely we're not gonna be, this is not something that gonna be something that is across the street where they have like a cluster townhomes. We'll have like a freehold townhomes. Those are going to be something similar that is gonna be, that are across the Exmoor Street. So if there is any questions for me, any things, any plans which they think that it can make look better, we are more than willing to, after the meeting or any time, we are more than willing to actually answer those concerns. Regarding the grading plan as well, I believe Chuck actually highlighted. We know that at the back office, there's like a big slope. Right now, we have proposed, the engineering has proposed something like a retaining wall. But if there is something that way we can actually help the backyard as well, we are more than willing to actually work with them and to make it possible. So at the end, I would just like to say, we'll work with the community. We are more than open to any suggestions or comments so that we can make it much better community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Thank you for delegating. Is there anyone else present this evening? Please come forward. Yep. And if I can trouble you to state your name and municipality.
Good evening, Chair and Council. My name is Allison Henshaw. I'm a homeowner on Exmoor. I live on the other side of Exmoor, so I'm not as affected as these folks over here. But I do use that side of Exmoor quite frequently. I use the intersection to get out onto Woolwich because it's easier to see further up the road than it is with all the increased traffic from the neighborhoods. I am going to out myself. I'm a property standards officer with the City of Waterloo, so I've been looking at this through a different lens. And there are things that are bothering me about it. And one, the traffic has been mentioned several times. People are speeding on Woolwich. It doesn't matter that the traffic calming implements have been put in, the speed bumps and the roundabouts. People are speeding, slamming on their brakes, going over the speed bump and speeding again. I have an 11-year-old daughter who rides her bicycle all over the place. There's tons of kids in the neighborhood. I've been on Exmoor for 15 years, and it has changed so much in that time. Intensification is important. I understand that. I recognize it, but I think this is the wrong place for it. With a 5-meter, I believe it was a 5-meter front lot line, we're gonna run into issues with front yard parking and widening driveways. We're gonna have issues with noise because we're packing more people in. We're gonna have issues with garbage because we're packing more people in. It's a beautiful little corner. There is lots of wildlife. We use the multi-use trail all the time, and I would hate to see that change. Again, 15 years, I've seen people come and go, but I think it needs to stay the way it is, just because of how the neighborhood has changed with the new families and the children running around. We were inundated with construction workers when they were building the Kitchener townhouses. They were all parked on that little section of Exmoor. I can only imagine that's what it's gonna be like for overnight parking and for day parking when we do have these people who have tiny driveways and a garage that they're not using for parking because everyone knows we use our garages for storage. So that's my 2 cents. I will keep it short because I realize this is running long, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any questions for the delegate? Okay, thank you ever so kindly. Yeah, please. If I could just trouble you to state your name for the record and your residence.
My name is Roger Chowdhury, and I am the father of the children that live in 141. I'm kind of curious just to wonder if the infrastructure can handle the extra sewage. What's going to happen with the previous homes that are hooked to the sewage system? And I'm concerned about my children. They've bounced around a lot after a divorce and have finally settled down, and after changing schools 6 times because of different municipalities. My kids bike to school. My kids are in the area playing, and what are they gonna do?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any questions?
So maybe we can, I'll see if council has any questions. No, yeah. Councilor Bassett.
I just wanted to, maybe Aminu, you can speak to the sanitary report, just to discuss infrastructure concerns that he's raised, and thank you for your delegation.
Through the chair to Councillor Vasic, in terms of the stormwater management and functional services report, those studies were submitted, and based on those findings, more or less, the recommendation is that the existing system is adequate to support the townhouse development. Again, this is being reviewed by our engineering staff, so they will vet the information of that report.
So just for clarity, when staff refer to a site servicing report, it's all of the services, so sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water main. So it is a requirement of the application to determine, as you said, whether there's capacity in those pipes to support the additional homes. And so, yep, no, it's true, and it's a really great question, but it is one that the applicant will have to demonstrate.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing us this evening. I will keep this short. My name is Kimberly Sear. I am the adjacent residence to the new development. I live at 529 Exmoor Street. The gentleman here from the co-owner has mentioned that he will work with us with regards to the sloping, drainage, and such. I have a great concern with this. My residence sits quite high, and we have not been allowed to change the grading whatsoever due to runoff and flooding. So I really ask that this is really looked into, as the ground level of these, the foundation will sit as high as my back fence, if I'm not mistaken, which will have a retaining wall. Then the 3 stories will start from that moment forth. Those of us who reside there now will have approximately 4 stories that we are losing. We will have 3-story building on top of what we have our fence at now. Snow removal is a current problem for myself. The residents that are on Exmoor Street at the townhouses currently take their snow because there's not enough room between them, and they bring it over to the side where the proposed driveways will be. So now we will have double residences without safe place to put their snow. Snowbanks are to the point where you cannot see children. At this point, I do contact the city of Waterloo because all that snow is brought around the corner and dumped in front of my house. So that part will help me. But the fact that we have nowhere to see these children who are running around under these snowbanks that are over 12 feet high is a big problem. As you all mentioned about the drainage, the sewage, the utilities, parking, snow removal, and water are the biggest concerns right now. I've been there for 30 years. I've seen the growth from day one, from where there was a mound of dirt around. We do have a small playground. It is not accessible enough for more children, and we have no accessibility for disabled children in our area. So please take that into consideration also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
coming this evening and for your willingness to speak. It's very helpful. Is there anything else? Okay, thank you ever
Thank
so
you.
kindly. Mayor McCain?
Oh, excuse me, sorry, you're Kim?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for coming in. You had, had just read the information that you had sent in later this afternoon about the grading.
Yes.
I'm just not sure I understand. You're concerned about the way the property is proposed. I mean, understanding that things may shift and change, but you're quite concerned about, like your house is like this?
On the
kind
end of Lot A, Block A, is a fence, a wooden fence. It drops down about 8 to 10 feet, the grading there, my backyard,
Yep.
and then it comes up to my house.
Okay.
So my house faces the current residence's second floor. So the amount of drainage coming between the very small proposed, I don't have the drawing in front of me, sorry, amount between the retaining wall and the current wooden fence. Where's the water from that side, the end block, going into this grading? I understand, but when it runs off to my and this gentleman's backyard.
But you had mentioned that you had asked the city, I wasn't quite following what you said in the letter. You had asked about
when I bought the lot,
regrading your own lot?
When I bought the lot, it was a stipulation that none of the lots are able to change the grading due to water runoff. We would have flooded out the land behind us. So now with them raising it up above us, we have the same issue that we were not allowed to do back when I bought the house in 1993.
And how recently did you ask staff, have that
I
conversation?
haven't recently asked because of the way it's situated. If I was to increase my backyard to equal the fence line, I would be probably 8 to 10 feet above their backyard.
Okay.
So I would have a wooden fence blocking soil 10 feet high from going into their backyard.
Okay.
It's hard to explain without looking at the actual drawings and from out my backyard, but there is such a slope, which you can tell on the one picture, how it goes down into their yard, and my house is situated up higher. We're both up on a hill going down into their backyard.
Sure, okay. I guess I would just encourage you to continue to talk to staff. I see Mr. Ormson, who's the commissioner of this department, Integrated Planning and Public Works, to just somehow connect to follow up on those issues. Thanks very much, Ron.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank
Kim.
you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak to this application? Seeing none. Yeah, questions of staff. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. Just something that one of the delegates had highlighted that I'm curious about. Is there, and I'm having a hard time seeing through the plans, I cycle in that area quite a bit, even though I live on the complete other side of town. So the active transportation network through there has improved quite significantly. Is there a proposal to add a sidewalk on that side of Exmoor in front of this proposed development? Because right now there's no sidewalk on that side of Exmoor.
Through the chair to Councillor Bodley. So there is a 5 meter, or 2 meter, I should say, road widening requirement along Woolwich Street, which is required by the region. So that is intended for improvements to Woolwich Street. I don't have specific details on what the future intent is. That's with the region, but I can certainly find it out.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm misrepresenting my question here perhaps. There is already a wide multi-use path on Woolwich in that area. It's quite lovely. But there's no sidewalk on Exmoor. So in terms of building 11 townhomes, I would imagine that we might consider asking the proponent here to consider putting a sidewalk that connects to this beautiful multi-use trail that we built.
Again, so along Exmoor, there isn't any sidewalk proposed due to the limitations of the building typology and the lot depth. There may or may not be an opportunity to add a full sidewalk, but there could be some options to explore a sidewalk within the municipal right-of-way. But I don't have those details, but we can certainly have that conversation with our transportation colleagues.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because I think, you know, certainly that would improve some of the commentary that we're hearing from some of the delegates when it comes to on-street parking, when it comes to snow piling up, et cetera. If there was actually a safe way to walk from Exmoor down to Woolwich, aside from having to cross to the other side. So thank you for that. And I have one other question, if I may, through you, Chair Freeman. And I want to maybe think tactfully about how I'm going to ask this question. How much weight do we put when we're contemplating a zone change as is being proposed here from R2 to R8? How much weight do we put into the fact of what the surrounding neighborhood context is when it comes to the zoning? Because in this particular instance, I would say it would appear that the vast majority of the area around this property is zoned for R8 already. So how much weight do we put into looking at adjacent properties in terms of zoning?
To the chair, to Councillor Bodley, so in terms of evaluating this proposal, we look at everything that's put in front of us in terms of the reports, studies, and one element of the zoning that staff look at is the number of site-specific modifications. So one thing is that it's important for the applicant to just try to limit a lot of those specific asks to kind of frame their application to be more appropriate. To your point about most of the area surrounding being zoned R8, that is a consideration, but it's more about balancing all those competing agendas, being the traffic, the trees, and all balancing all things and seeing what's important and what's appropriate, if that answers the question.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none. If there's no more delegations and no more questions to staff, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. And just a reminder for those that are interested in finding out more about this application, be sure to sign the correct registry at the back with your information, and then you'll be notified of upcoming meetings on this matter. So thank you very much for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts on this application. We're just going to take a 2-second transition because I'm leaving the chair for the evening now. I'm conflicted on the next agenda item, so thank you, council.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll continue with the rest of the agenda, which is a formal public meeting. Excuse me. So this is a formal public meeting to consider item 12B, Official Plan Amendment 51, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z 2402, Leicester Sunview Development, Inc., 249-253 Sunview Street. Any persons who want further notification of this application, including the passage of any bylaw should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. If there is more than one binder, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the Record on September 5th, 2024, and mailed or emailed on August 19th, 2024, to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property and to public agencies. An informal meeting was not held.
Thank you, Natalia, sorry. Our planner, Amanda Wazinski, will now give a brief overview of the application. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe and members of council. My name is Amanda Wyszynski. I am a senior development planner and site plan chair with IPPW. Staff have received an official plan and rezoning application for the lands municipally known as 249 to 253 Sunview Street from Arcadis on behalf of Leicester Sunview Development. My presentation today will summarize the proposal and speak to my recommendations to council. The subject lands are highlighted in red, are located north of the Sunview Street and University Avenue West intersection. The subject lands have a total area of approximately 0.22 hectares with a frontage of approximately 50 meters along Sunview Street. The lands are currently occupied by 3 single detached dwellings. In regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated as mixed-use medium-height density on Schedule A and are within specific provision area 45. On Schedule B, the subject lands are identified as medium density, 12 stories. The mixed-use medium high-density residential designation contemplates for building typologies such as multiple unit residential buildings. An official plan amendment is being sought to permit a maximum of 13 stories. In regards to zoning, the subject lands are zoned as holding, residential Northdale 12. Within the zone, the permitted maximum height is 41.5 meters and the maximum density is 600 bedrooms per hectare. The applicant is proposing to lift the holding on the site and implement site-specific provisions to facilitate the development. Staff can confirm the applicant has satisfied the requirements of lifting the Northdale holding provision. The site-specific amendments are being sought to facilitate the development of a 13-story apartment building containing 131 units. The existing grades along Sunview Street slope down from north to south, meaning the building will have the appearance of a 12-story building at the north and the appearance of a 13-story building at the south. The building will function as a 12-story building with the first story at the south end of the lands functioning as an extruded basement. Vehicular access is proposed along the southerly property line. 33 vehicular parking spaces and 45 bicycle parking spaces are proposed. No commercial uses are proposed. The official plan amendment being sought is technical in nature as a result of grades on the subject lands. Specific provision area 45 limits the maximum number of stories to 12 for lands designated as mixed-use medium high density residential, whereas the proposed development is technically 13. The applicants are not proposing an increase in the permitted metric height. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is seeking a number of site-specific zoning exemptions. These amendments relate to the lifting of the holding, first-story relief, structured parking, landscape open space, rear building step back, permitting an architectural feature, and tower separation. My next few slides will explain each in detail. In regards to the first story, the applicant is proposing 4 technical amendments relating to the minimum first-story height, minimum number of first-story entrances, maximum stair height, maximum stair projection, and maximum podium height. Staff have identified the proposed relief on the image on the screen. Each of these are technical in nature as a result of the grades. Staff do not oppose the amendments as they are technical and will not negatively affect the public realm. In regards to structured parking, these 3 technical amendments are being sought as the zoning bylaw regulates the location of parking within the first story of a building. Each proposed amendment is identified on the screen. Due to grades, relief is being sought relating to the minimum side and rear yard setbacks for structured parking and the location of parking. Staff do not oppose the amendments as they are technical and the intent of the provisions are being maintained. Structured parking will not be visible from the public realm or the streetscape. Relief is being sought for landscape open space. Specifically, the applicant is proposing a minimum landscape open space of 27%, whereas 30% is required for land zoned RN12. Staff do not oppose this reduction, as the applicant has maximized the landscape areas while maintaining vehicular functionality for the development. The RN12 zone requires a step back of 3 meters above the property, whereas the applicant is proposing no rear step back. Staff do not object to the site-specific amendment. The recessed area along the entire rear building facade creates articulation and variation. 2 technical amendments are being sought to facilitate the proposed architectural feature. The zoning bylaw regulates architectural projections and did not contemplate for this type of architectural feature. The proposed architectural feature creates a reduced step back of 0.75 meters, whereas 3 meters is required. Staff do not oppose these amendments, as the architectural feature will create visual interest, and the majority of the front building facade is maintaining the 3-meter step back as required by the zoning bylaw. The applicant is also proposing a reduced tower separation of 9.5 meters, whereas 11 meters is required. Staff do not object to this site-specific amendment and are of the opinion the general intent of the tower separation provisions are maintained. In regards to my recommendations, staff are recommending approval of report IPPW 2024-016, that council adopt official plan amendment number 51, Leicester Sunview Development Inc., 249-253 Sunview Street, in accordance with the staff report. The council requests the regional municipality of Waterloo approve official plan amendment number 51, and that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z2402. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So council, are there questions? Yeah, we'll start with Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Amanda. I looked at some of the feedback from residents in the area and the concern about the parking rate, the 33 parking spaces for 131 units, and possible spillover onto the road. So I'm wondering if you, from a policy perspective, could explain the lower number of parking units.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Rowe, great question. Recently, the province has made changes and made changes to the Planning Act through Bill 185, and these lands are located within a major transit station area. And because of that, there are no technical parking requirements. There's still requirements for bicycle parking, there's still requirements for loading, but for vehicular parking spaces, there are no requirements. That being set aside, based off of the RN12 zone, they're required to have 34 parking spaces, and they're proposing 33. So they're still more or less still in alignment with what we would have required if Bill 185 was not in effect.
Great, thank you. I think that clarification is helpful. I think Bill 185 isn't necessarily something that everyone's aware of or how that impacts. As you said, 34 is our parking rate anyway, but that Bill 185 does impact. Thank you.
Councillor, are there other questions or comments by staff or of staff? Just a couple questions for me. It says about reducing the amount of entrances on the first story from, 2 that are generally required, 4 that are generally required to 2. Is that a result of a legislative change, or I'm just curious about that request?
So through the chair to the chair. So the RN12 and a lot of the zones within the Northdale area regulate the number of entrances on the first story. And because of the grades on this property, technically only 2 of the doors are on what staff deem to be the first story, and 2 of the other doors technically are on the second story. And so since, technically speaking, those 2 other doors are not on the first story, we had to seek relief for that provision.
Thank you very much. And I'm just curious, are you concerned about these all being 1 bedroom? Like, is that a concern at all for staff?
Through the chair, through the rezoning and the official plan application process, we don't have the mechanism to regulate the number of units, only the number of bedrooms based off the density. The application still needs to go through the site plan process, And through the site plan process, that is something we could evaluate to see, is there the opportunity to perhaps combine a couple of bedrooms to create a family unit within the building while still maintaining the 131 beds?
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, we'll thank you for your presentation. Now I will now ask any registered delegations to come forward. And I note that there is Jeff Henry, Urban Planner, Arcadius Professional Services. Jeff, you're very familiar, obviously, with this chamber, given the years you spent here on this side of the horseshoe. So welcome. Nice to see you, Jeff. And you have 10 minutes.
She'll give you a moment.
The time's, we're counting the time. Just joking, just joking. You know the rules, Jeff. Just joking.
No, you
Thanks.
are, and that's fine. I have 5 slides.
Okay,
So, I
go
mean,
ahead.
Because Amanda did such a great job, I didn't need to duplicate it. If there's one thing I remember from up there was watching the presentation done over again from applicant planners. That's on my list of things I never want to do. So I'll start by saying to Mayor McCabe, members of council, my name's Jeff Henry. I'm with Arcadis, an urban planner. I'm here tonight with Herbert Zhang of Leicester Sunview Development, Inc., and his larger brethren that are behind this particular project that we're very excited to help them deliver through council tonight. I wanted to thank Amanda for all of her flexibility work and availability as we work through some of the technical issues, which I'm sure you can appreciate given the report, as we went through, along with other city and regional staff as we went through the OPA and ZBA process. And I won't bury the lead. We agree with staff's recommendations and encourage you to support them. But I just did want to spend a little bit of time on a couple of the details that are before you tonight. You've heard about the land use designation here. I want to focus on the topography, which is really driving a lot of why we're here tonight with the number of changes that are before you, the number of site-specific regulations. The grade change is about a story across the site, and that has a significant impact on design and design response to be able to meet the intent of the Northdale zoning, which is, in this case, in conflict with the regulations of the Northdale zoning. So if you meet the regulations, you don't meet the intent. So it was how do you design response to the context of the site and do the best that we can and all of that and meet the intent that the city's put forward. And so that's what's before you tonight. I flagged 2 other buildings that are in proximity. The one at 255 Sunview is to our north. It's technically 12 stories. That entrance is in the basement. I'm not sure how much light it gets, but that's one design response that's being provided in context on this slope of Sunview. The other is across the street, and that design response is 13 stories. I was up there at the time. I'm not sure how it's 13 stories, but there it is on the other side of the street. So it's not unusual to see this number come forward in this particular part of Northdale. And of course, it's well served by all of the fantastic multimodal transportation options that are being provided through the region and the city and that are contemplated in this area to help people get around without driving, which is exactly what people do in the neighborhood, by and large. In terms of the proposed development, we do have 131 units with 131 bedrooms. To Mayor McCabe, your question earlier, this was a question staff raised through the comment response process that we went through, and we sat down with our project architect and we looked at unit configuration. If you put a couple of units together, you ended up with such a large unit, they have to be 3 bedrooms. And at that point, you've tripped over the density limit that's on the site. So we've taken a look at what we can do within all of that, and that's the conclusion response that we provided. I assume it'll be the same if we have it again, because we did sit down with our project architect to see if that was possible. But it's not in this case unless additional density was allowed, which is not what's before us tonight. We'd encourage you to think about that, though, as you're going through your OP review. So again, it's technically 13 stories because of some of the definitions in the 2018 bylaw that changed perhaps some of the interpretation under the Northdale plan in 2012. And so that's, I think, the wrinkle for why across the street was 13, and we can't be without an official plan amendment. And of course, on bicycle parking spaces, which you can still require, we're 40% above your regulation. So we're trying to provide more than is required here, recognizing what's going on in the area. And our amenity space provision is at 75% higher than what's required in the bylaw. So there's a lot that we're trying to do as we're trying to balance the other constraints on the site. And then again into the site-specific regulations. Amanda broke it up in about 4 or 5 different ways. I've broken it up into 2. And the first one is, again, the design response to topography. All of those just come from that average grade, which you can see measured across that site in the technical definition of first story, and how we've been able to design a first story that follows the land in a way that perhaps wasn't contemplated by the plan. I think I was showing that here on this slide, if you look at the picture. So the first floor is double height on the left side and the right side at 6 meters. It pinches to about 5 meters in the middle, and the second floor cuts off. So those are mezzanine units on the right side. They'll be addressed as unit 101, 102. So they are first story units functionally. And so in following the land, that generates a response because the city policy is horizontal, but our architects tried to follow the grade and match Sunview Street. So those follow from there, along with trying to get as much parking as we could into the site and structure it into the site, while also being able to still drain the site. Because when we looked at the inverts in the road for where the storm sewer comes out, couldn't go lower than we have, and so the parking, if we didn't want to have sump pumps running all the time to be able to pull that stuff out, which you don't want to have if you can avoid them, that's as low as we could get, and that resulted in it being above grade. So we could have gone below, but then we're using energy for no reason when we can just drain by gravity. So, which also isn't very resilient. So that was another design limitation that we were responding to, and that generated some of the other variances on the site. And then the others are site constraints and urban design creativity and responses and flourishes from the project architects here, particularly the architectural feature. Councillor Vasic, I know we spoke a little bit about what exactly is a feature and what makes it a feature. I'm a planner, not an architect, so I don't have a good answer for what an architectural feature is, but what I can say is it breaks up the massing of the building, and it helps to vary the interest from the pedestrian realm on the street, which is consistent with what we're trying to achieve what the city's trying to achieve in Northdale. So, just to sum up very quickly, planning justification perspective, in our opinion, the proposal before you is in alignment with the overarching planning framework, including the new provincial planning statement, which took effect yesterday. Yay! Everybody change all the things you're doing. But generally, in this kind of project, in this kind of neighborhood, the direction from the provincial planning statement is the same as the direction of the provincial policy statement in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Intensification, good. Major transit station area intensification, even better. Transit-oriented intensification, fantastic. Those are still true, even if the words are in different places. And so the alignment is there, including down to the ROP and to the city's official plan. We believe it is compatible and context-appropriate intensification for these lands and this site and this neighborhood. It does assist in further completing the community inside an existing 15-minute neighborhood, which is one of the key directions from the ROP. It provides a range and mix of housing. Even though the number of bedrooms per unit is the same, the unit configurations are a little bit different, so there's different options and probably different price points for people to be able to engage in that living environment is what we could do with the density provision that's on the site. And it makes an efficient use of infrastructure and municipal services, including all of the great transportation infrastructure. Normally we think of water, sewer, storm, but we should also think of LRT, buses, separated cycling infrastructure when we think about infrastructure we're making efficient use of. And so that, in my opinion, this represents good planning and that is in the public interest. And we would request that council adopt the recommendations presented tonight by staff. Questions?
Thank you very much, Councillor Henry. We do have a couple questions. We'll start with Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I have just a couple of questions. So something really interesting was pointed out to us today when we were doing a little facility tour with the some of the members of GRAC, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, who pointed out that EV parking spots, charging spots, are never actually accessibly sized. And so if you, for instance, were somebody requiring both an EV charger and an accessible parking spot, you'd be out of luck. So that's just one thing that I wanted to ask about. And then the other is, council's heard me talk before about what sort of building level measures are there to mitigate extreme heat. And this is of particular concern in our high-rise buildings. And so I'm just looking at, I went through the energy study and I was just sort of thinking about those heat pumps, air source heat pumps, and whether they have unit level controls, and also whether the window glazing or there's thermal breaks on the balconies, just what some of those little measures that may actually make those units more comfortable as the environment heats up. Thanks.
Sure, and as someone living in a high-rise unit, I hear you on all of that, particularly on those design days in the summer, which are particularly challenging. First, on the EV side, the city's requirements in bylaw is that all parking spaces are EV ready, so they're wired in so that they can be added later. That would include, my understanding would be, the accessible parking spaces. So are all of the parking spaces accessible parking spaces? No, but the accessible parking spaces are part of the broader requirement that they be EV ready. So I think that's the best I can do on that one. So certainly folks can put them in if that is a need in the building. But that is a good point about what you see out in community, and I think community facilities are a place where that's something that needs some attention and some thought. In terms of the energy requirements, we did submit an energy study as part of this. It was a requirement that was picked up. So the building, as designed now, the base building that we're working from today is 25% better on energy than the Ontario Building Code. There are options in the study that were identified to go further in terms of greenhouse gas mitigation and some of that usage. So part of what is driving that is envelope improvements to OBC in terms of R40 rather than R30 insulation and on the roof. And I think I missed the numbers. I didn't sort of take over, but there's an improvement on the insulation on those. And I think what you see from the glazing, I don't have the ratio offhand, but the most important thing you're looking at for energy efficiency is making sure you get the window to wall ratio right. And that's sort of at 60 to 40. If we look at this isn't one of those downtown Toronto glass wall, use all the energy in the world kinds of buildings. This one's one that our architects have kept that foremost in mind to make sure that we have building comfort. But I can take those comments back as we go through detailed design, because there's always options and things are moving. Right?
Yeah, just to respond to that very briefly, this summer there was a lot of conversation about buildings in Northdale and them being overheating, especially during our heat waves. And so it's just something that I'm attuned to, thinking about in terms of all these developments coming up. I'm going to keep asking this question.
Yeah, and the noise, one of the outputs of the noise study requirements is that the Type D warning clause be inserted, which is a requirement that air conditioning be fitted. That hasn't always been the case for all developments, and certainly not if you go back to the 2000s and early 2010s. These were not necessarily AC units, and those are, I think, some of the most stressed areas, and I used to hear those concerns as well. And certainly council has its prerogative to consider whether there are legislative tools to require things and to facilitate a transition, because those can be expensive to adhere to.
Absolutely. Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Actually, my questions have been asked and answered. You addressed the 1 versus 2 bedroom units, and then Councillor Wright, we've had this discussion many times about the heat, et cetera. So you've already covered that. But as my predecessor, it's nice to see you in council chambers.
It's good to see you as well. I was relaying to my boss back at the workplace that the last time I stood here in front of council was April 2010. And that was on, should council pursue a secondary plan in Northdale? The answer was yes, as it turns out, and here we are. So it is full circle.
And here we are. It's a full circle career moment for you. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe. I rack my brain to really try and stump you on a question and, try to find a way to put the word riparian into my question and a host of other things. But
I do have our servicing and stormwater slide up here if you really want to get into.
Maybe after. But I do have a more boring question, I suppose. So given the changes that were outlined around eliminating parking minimums in MTSAs, was that a part of the conversation as you went through this development, considering less parking in this space for perhaps more landscaped open space, or was it not really considered because of the fact that we're bumping right up against the density maximum, and so we weren't really looking to do anything there? I'm curious about, practically, from a developer's perspective, from a planner's perspective, what in future might get in the way of right-sizing the parking, or whether or not you believe that this is the right size of parking for this particular development.
So the direction that, to your question, the direction that we have is certainly to provide some parking on this site, because it's an important feature for some people in terms of how they get around. I mean, my experience, and my traffic expert, is that Northdale has weekend peaks rather than sort of daily peaks on traffic. There are folks leaving on the weekend and coming back, so the coming and going pattern looks different than is typical, and so that's a function of many folks that will live in a building like this, is that there will be cars that will come, and it's not entirely avoidable. In terms of the conversation we had through this process, between the first submission and the second submission, we had made some design changes because city staff had identified that the design response we provided at grade initially didn't, and in the rear, didn't quite meet those needs. And in order to pinch some of those to create more space for the rear retaining walls, so you could pick garbage if it fell back there, that kind of thing, and that we didn't have things butting out into the front yard, which we treated well, but the city staff didn't want to see sort of the parking garage extend a little bit. When we pinched it, we lost a space. And staff was supportive of that direction prior to Bill 185, because you were getting something for it. You were getting a public realm that landscape staff and planning staff felt was better, and the trade was a parking space. And the reality on this site is the way parking is measured in Northdale is you take the residential parking, you round up. You take the visitor parking, you round up. The combined rounding was over one space. So if you did it together and then rounded up, we still meet the requirement. That's not the way the requirement's calculated, but just in terms of the ballpark that we were in for how close 33 and 34 are relative to the regulation, that's where it's at. And I know when we talked to our client about the design solution, a parking space is something that in a condo you can sell. You can't sell for how much it costs, but you can sell it for more than nothing. And so it is an offset in an industry that is difficult these days to be able to make pro formas work and projects go ahead. So sometimes, like if I took 5 parking spaces away, I wouldn't take the space away, just from how the building's configured. So you're not taking the cost away, but then you're taking the revenue away, right? And that's a feed into the pro forma of a project. More broadly, I think your question around parking minimums is important. I've seen a number of conversations in projects around the region, and some projects are ready to go low and some projects are not. And it's all based on what market they think they're hitting to be able to sell units or rent units and meet that demand. And every project is different. So there's no one size fits all, but the flexibility that comes on City Hall's side from not trying to make that decision for a proponent helps them make the right decision and not overpark a site.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Bodley? Okay. Are there other questions from members of council? Just a question for me, Jeff, of your clients. We see quite a number of applications have come in over the 2 years that I've been sitting around this horseshoe, and some have gone forward and many have not. So I'm wondering what your timeline is if this project is approved tonight. What's the commitment and timeline for actually getting shovels in the ground?
So I think what we were having this conversation before we came in. When we started this process down this road for applications, the timeline was now, and then things happened. since 2021, right? 2022 and 2023 and 2024 have not been great for building. And so certainly the ownership group is constantly reassessing for trying to figure out what the trigger point is for when you can sell this number of units in a condo within a short enough period of time that the project doesn't go bust. And the hope is that with the moves that the Bank of Canada is going to make, we hope this week, and then the continued moves into the middle of next year, is that the rate point will mean by the end of this year, you're starting to look at a better place to going into market. But that's a moving target. Right, so it's there's no commitment on it can start on this day or on that day. It's constantly making sure the numbers can work. And to Council's point around number of bedrooms, if through your official plan process, which I understand you're taking off density requirements or proposing to at the OP level and leaving them at zoning, if those were allowed to float higher, but leave your performance envelope of those buildings there, then there may be an opportunity to create sort of 2-bedroom units inside that kind of space. In a way that wouldn't trip over 600, because 600 wouldn't be the limit anymore. And then those extra bedrooms might make the math work faster. But the math for here is hard at the moment. But we're getting this in the books so that we can strike when the iron's hot.
Okay, thank you very much, and for that fulsome answer. And I guess I would just encourage you, if you haven't already, to contribute to the official plan, like the come and delegate again, or contribute your comments to the official plan process. So, thank you very much. Are there any other? Is there anyone else present tonight who wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none. Seeing none, then if there are no more delegations, this formal meeting is concluded, and the application is now open to council for a motion and for debate. So, Councillor Rowe, you'd like to give additional questions or comments?
No, I would like to move the motion to approve the application. Whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved that council approve report IPPW 2024-016, that council adopt official plan amendment number 51, OPA 51, Leicester Sunview Developments Incorporated, 249 to 253 Sunview Street, in accordance with section 7 of staff report IPPW 2024-016. That council requests that the regional municipality of Waterloo approve official plan amendment number 51, OPA 51. That council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z2402, Leicester Sunview Development Incorporated for 249 to 253 Sunview Street, in accordance with section 7 of staff report IPPW 2024-016.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. That's moved by Councillor Rowe. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Jeff, and to the proponents of the project. We look forward to this getting shovels in the ground whenever possible, understanding that there's some challenges in the marketplace, but thank you very much. And thank you, Amanda, as well, and staff who have worked on this project. Excuse me. Okay, we'll move now to consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. We have none. Notice of motion. We have none. Pardon me? It's under new business. Okay. Communications and correspondence, none. Unfinished business, there's none. Council, are there any questions? Seeing none. New business. Councillor Wright.
It's okay. So I just want to take a moment tonight to acknowledge a hateful incident that took place in Uptown last week. While on a walk in the neighborhood where he lives, a resident of Waterloo was told that he does not belong here because of his ethnicity. And I'm raising this here in Chambers because this is only one incident in many that are occurring regularly in our broader community. It's vital that we reinforce the message that everyone belongs here, and it's urgent that we invest in the work to combat hate and foster a sense of belonging. So earlier this month, Statistics Canada released a report that highlighted one aspect of this issue. Police-reported hate crimes have ballooned in the Kitchener-Cambridge-Waterloo census metropolitan area, so that's, our much broader urban community. And there are many organizations and initiatives in our community who have been working for a very long time on combating hate and fostering belonging. The rise in reporting hate crimes is in part because of the attention they've brought to the issue and the resources they've provided and the relationships that they've built with community members. So I just want to share that work is underway to bring a motion to council that focuses on combating hate in our local community, particularly because it's urgent that we acknowledge what is happening and the efforts already underway in our community, that we reinforce our commitment to collaborate, amplify, and enhance those efforts, and that we call for renewed collaboration. The time is now to do this work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Appreciate those comments, and you know, I had met with the individual involved with this, and we had a brief discussion about it, but feel terrible about what he and many other members of our community face on an ongoing basis, and know that our staff and council members here, there's a number of programs and initiatives that have been undertaken starting many years ago that are that we continue to work on through our neighborhood teams, through our reconciliation, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion plan. And as you said, work with many community groups, but we know that there's more that needs to be done and continued dialogue that needs to happen to address these issues. So thank you very much for sharing that. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair, through you. And I just would echo Councillor Wright's comments. I'm glad and pleased that you're bringing this forward. Councillor Rowe and I have been dealing with a similar kind of incident, and so it is something that's broad. So I look forward to our discussion on your motion coming up. Changing gears slightly to a celebration, today marks a special day in the history of St. Mary's General Hospital, which officially opened its doors on October 21st, 1924. From its founding by the Sisters of St. Joseph to meet an unmet need in the early 1900s to becoming a leader in patient-centered care, St. Mary's has remained true to its mission of inclusive and welcoming healthcare for all. There is a special exhibit at the Ken Sealing Regional Museum called Beyond the Bricks, which takes you down memory lane of everything that St. Mary's has done for our community, and just the kinds of things that people were looking at and looking after. There also is a documentary that's part of the exhibit called Heart of Care. I had the privilege of seeing it last week when they were opening their celebrations. Mayor was there as well, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the audience when they showed this documentary. There's some really good heartstring stories happening there. I encourage everybody to take the time. It's well worth the visit to go through the exhibit. It's open until April 2025. So I just would like to offer congratulations and thank you specifically to the Sisters of St. Joe's for having the vision 100 years ago to recognize that we needed a healthcare facility in our local community to deal with those that were not able to get care, and to the staff and leadership over the last number of years as they mark this amazing milestone. So thank you to everyone for everything that you've done so far in our community. I know it's not a Waterloo location, but it's certainly an experience many of us have had care at St. Mary's Hospital, and it's a vital part of our community.
Absolutely, and yeah, whether the hospitals are in Kitchener or Cambridge, I mean, these are hospital, or the one that will eventually be in Waterloo. These are facilities that people from across the region access often in their greatest time and need, and when they're feeling sometimes at the lowest. So it has been a real legacy that St. Mary's continues to have in our community, and it really is a great exhibit. If anybody, particularly, there's a giant-sized heart there that you can, and a cath lab, so you can experience that, and an OR. So it is worth the time to go out and reflect on the impact that they have had. So thank you, Councillor. Any other new business for members of council? Councillor Bodley.
Excuse me, thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. I just wanted to say thank you to staff. Staff hosted a PIC for a new park block that is being proposed as part of the extended development in Vista Hills. And it's a curious one, I know, because it's a developer requirement, it's a developer park. It's not really a public process typically for these types of parks. And yet at the same time, there are many people who have lived in Vista Hills for a very long decade or longer in some cases. And so there's a great curiosity around what is going to happen in that area. And so I'm really appreciative for staff being willing to connect with the developer and their planner to host that public information center and to be able to communicate to residents about what is going to be happening in this area, in spite of the fact that we maybe don't have the full ability to guide exactly what's going to happen in that space, but from a perspective of keeping our community residents informed about what is happening, I really appreciate staff going above and beyond in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley, and I know you've been a very active and advocate for getting that park moving, so well done to you as well for keeping that on the front burner. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to mention that the Waterloo Professional Firefighters Association, in I believe it was them, that had the graduation for the new firefighters joining the Waterloo team. So that was a really great day to welcome them, to meet their families, and to really see the commitment and the dedication that they have to the job and that they will be sharing with the residents of Waterloo.
Yes, indeed, there were 7 new firefighters welcomed through the graduation process on Friday, so we're happy to see them come on board. Absolutely. Council, any other comments, Council? Just a really quick note that it's nearly 2 years since October, it's October 21st, but 2024, but 2 years ago on October 24th, 2022 was the election. So I know we had 3 new councillors and then myself as mayor and 4 returning members of council. And just wanted to say it's been, this first 2 years has gone by in an absolute blur. There's been a lot, I think, of really interesting initiatives and programs and learning personally that I've done, and I've really enjoyed learning and talking and discussing various issues with all of you, and of course with our excellent professional staff who are here to guide us in these decisions that we make. So just wanted to note that the anniversary coming up and say thank you to everyone for, the journey that we continue to be on behalf of the residents in the city of Waterloo. So moving on to the enactment of the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor, excuse me. That is carried unanimously. And adjournment. Councillor Wright and moved by Councillor Bassick. All in favor. That is carried. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.